CIA, IRS to release Vows on Tinubu. More trouble for Tinubu as NADECO storms FBI, U.S. Social Security Administration vows to unmask Tinubu. And 2 killed, others injured as bandits invade Kaduna mosque. Details now. The world news begins with President Bola Tinubu ordering a quick and immediate implementation of the recommendations made by the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee across ministries, agencies, and departments of the federal government. The President gave the order today, October 24, after receiving the report and the quick win achievements of the committee from its chairman, Taiwo Oyedele, at the State House, Abuja. The special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngulali, told newsmen in Abuja that President Tinubu also directed his advisor on policy coordination, Hadiza Bala Usman, to liaise with the secretary to the government of the federation and Oyedele to give effect to the directive. Furthermore, the president is set to present the recommendations to the Federal Executive Committee during their meeting on Monday. Meanwhile, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the last governorship elections in Adamawa State, Aishatu Dahiru Binani, and her rival in the People's Democratic Party, Ahmadu Fintiri, will know their fate on October 28, 2023, says the State Governorship Elections Petitions Tribunal. VOP News recalls that the APC and its candidate had filed a petition against the declaration of Governor Fintiri of the People's Democratic Party as the winner of the March 18, 2023 gubernatorial election in the state. APC and Binani have alleged extensive violations of the electoral law and fraudulent voting practices in their petition. Additionally, they have requested the tribunal to validate the declaration of Hudu Yunusa Ari, the then resident electoral commissioner in the state, as the winner of the election in the absence of the returning officer for the exercise. On their part, Fintiri and the PDP had also filed a motion asking the tribunal to dismiss the case brought by the APC and its candidates. Subsequently, Binani had urged the tribunal to deliver its judgment before the suspended INEC Resident Electoral Commission, Hudu Ari, who is being prosecuted over the alleged illegal declaration. The Adamawa State High Court of Justice had scheduled the arraignment of Ari for November 6, 2023. Ari faces multiple charges, including announcing false election results, breaching his oath of neutrality, disorderly conduct during the election, inciting disturbance. Columbia in Washington, D.C. has denied a request for an urgent release of President Bola Tinubu's confidential records compiled by American law enforcement authorities. An American transparency activist, Aaron Greenspan, had filed a motion to order the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence Agency, and other U.S. bodies to immediately turn over records they scheduled for release before the end of October. Greenspan filed the emergency request after Tinubu deployed lawyers to fight against the release, saying it would violate his privacy, among other statutory rights. He said Tinubu was trying to stall the release of the documents to foreclose any impact the disclosures may have on the ongoing election dispute at the Nigerian Supreme Court. But in a ruling on Monday, Judge Barrow Howell denied the hearing to compel the immediate release of the documents, saying that no hearing to determine the merits of the motion is necessary. Judge Howell, in her decision, said Greenspan did not adequately justify his request for an urgent hearing on his motion for expedited release of records, especially against the need to protect Tinubu's interests. She ruled, and I quote, "Plaintiff has not made any representation to the court that the balance of equities tips in his favor or that the granting of his motion would further the public interest. Given that the FOIA request is for records that, if any exist, may be of a highly sensitive and private nature, and that the subject of those documents, Bola A. Tinubu, has had no opportunity to protect his privacy interests in any such records, the balance of equities militates strongly in favor of denying this emergency motion. Plaintiff's emergency motion for a hearing to compel immediate document production is denied. No hearing to determine the merits of this motion is necessary." End quote. The judge also approved President Tinubu's request to allow his lawyer, Christopher Carmichael, to appear in the case. Now, while weighty evidences abound following the People's Democratic Party's presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar's exploit in the United States legal system to unmask President Bola Tinubu or Adekunle, Tinubu is still brewing. The National Democratic Coalition NADECO USA has called on America's Federal Bureau of Investigation to find out if Tinubu had in the past made any donations to Chicago State University directly or through third parties. This, according to NADECO USA, is important as it would show if there were some monetary or other inducements made to CSU by President Tinubu aimed at securing a certain privileges from CSU. The group, in a statement signed by the Executive Director Lloyd Ukwu and Publicity Secretary Comrade David Adeniko, said, and I quote, NADECO would also like the FBI and the Social Security Administration to determine how a security number belonging to another person began to be used by Mr. Tinubu. The group, in a statement signed by the Executive Director Lloyd Ukwu and Publicity Secretary Comrade David Adeniko, also stated that NADECO would as the original owner of the number, aware that her social security number was being used by another person. If it is not President Tinubu's, then what is his true social security number and under what name is it under? And still on the world news at 6, this particular incoming report states that suspected bandits have killed 2 persons during an invasion of a mosque at the Sabulayi Kangangi ward in Birnin-Wari local government area of Kaduna State. VOP News gathered that the bandits gunned down the imam and one worshipper identified as Kabiru, with 2 others sustaining various degrees of injuries identified as Bilia Meirabo and Ashiru Meirabo. VOP News also learned that the injured ones were said to be receiving medical attention at the Jibrin Megwari General Hospital, Birnin-Wari. A community leader, Zubair Abdurraouf, disclosed that the incident occurred during the early morning prayers around 5 a.m. today. Abdurraouf, who holds the title of Dan Masanin of Birnin-Wari, added that the bandits attack Birnin-Wari communities almost daily, killing and abducting residents, especially farmers. He added that the situation was more worrisome on the Birnin-Wari Kaduna highway and has become a nightmare for travelers and other road users. Now, I actually have via the telephone a legal practitioner, a social commentator. Also, he is also one who actually has very strong opinions and a public enthusiast when it comes to national issues within the Nigerian polity, and that is Barrister Eze Eluche. Barrister Eze Eluche, good evening and welcome to the World News at 6 right here on VOP 90.3 FM.
Thank you very much for having me on studios virtually.
All right, Barrister Eze, it is actually quite a lot, and I want to start off with this particular development from the FBI. Apparently, a particular Aaron Greenspan. Now, I want to read out who Aaron Greenspan is. Aaron Greenspan is an owner of Plain Sight, a website that advocates data transparency to combat corruption in public service. Now, Aaron Greenspan has labeled President Bola Tinubu an alleged criminal who is using delay tactics to pause the release of his records by the U.S. security agencies, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Central Intelligence Agency. However, when Aaron Greenspan went to the U.S. court to ask for the facilitation of the release of the FBI records on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, apparently his motion was turned down by the particular judge, and that is, her name is Judge Howell. In her decision, she said that Greenspan did not adequately justify his request for an urgent hearing on his motion for expedited release of records, especially against the need to protect Tinubu's interests. And she said that this particular plaintiff, who has not shown any representation whatsoever for his interest as to wanting that particular record of the president released to the public, and has not disclosed to them why he is interested in the president's academic record being unmasked. That's one major reason that they actually turned down that particular motion from Aaron Greenspan. Now, I don't know if you recall, 2 days ago, the one of the spokesperson for the APC, Bayo Onanuga, has stated that Aaron Greenspan is an individual that is being used by the PDP and also the Labour Party to help them facilitate the release of the FBI record that they will use to tender the Supreme Court. They want that record to be released as soon as possible so that they can use it as evidence at the Supreme Court. Now, the FBI record is meant to have been released from this month of October. About 2,500 of this academic record ought to have been released, and it's supposed to start from this month of October. However, we've not seen anything yet. Now, on 2 or 3 different occasions, the president has written to the United States and written to the FBI to stall the release of his academic record or whatever record it is that the FBI has against him. And critics have asked questions: why is the president so vehement on not wanting his record to be released? Now, the NADECO themselves organized a press conference yesterday while that particular Supreme Court hearing to tender the fresh appeal of evidence from the PDP to the Supreme Court was being held. They held a press conference yesterday, and to them they say they want to unmask the identity of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They're asking questions that whose social security number the President Bola Tinubu used in CSU. They also want to find out, if possible, that the president had paid any form of financial inducement or has paid any money whatsoever to that institution that has made them bring out conflicting reports about the president's academic record. Please, what's your take on it, Barrister Eze?
Now, this is a very, very long question, but let me just try and answer the ones I can do. Number one, the fact that Mr. Tinubu is always claiming that if they release information on him, it will be injurious to his person, should be something of concern to all Nigerians. When he did that same play with the Chicago State University, we saw what came out. What came out was the proof, the fact that the document, the certificate he submitted to INEC was a forged document. Now, the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, and several other United States investigation and law enforcement agencies are planning to release documents on Mr. Tinubu. And the same Tinubu again is saying they should delay it, it will affect him, it will impact on him. Now, you begin to ask yourself, what kind of a man is this? Many of us are here in Nigeria. We do not, I mean, for the police, for the DSS, for the EFCC to have a file on you that runs into thousands of pages, that shows that you are a person of interest to law enforcement. That means you have been living under the law. And that is, this man called Tinubu, who is now presiding over Nigeria, has several files, documents before these international law enforcement agencies. And it's only trying to tell them they should not release it, it will injure him, it will do whatever. What are we letting ourselves into in Nigeria? But the fact is this: what the court did in the United States in response to Alan Greenspan's application for urgent release was to say there is no need for that your application for an urgent release, since the FBI and the CIA and co have said they will release 500 pages in October. So those documents will still be released this October. Now, the question now is, why did this Alan Greenspan apply for an expedited release? It's because suddenly, the Supreme Court of Nigeria is now trying to be expeditious in hearing this matter and may likely give a decision or a judgment before the end of the month when the FBI is supposed to release documents. Let this be a note of warning to Nigerians. The Supreme Court cannot say they are not aware of the criminality, the forgery, and other crimes this Mr. Tinubu has already been affirmed to have committed, such as submitting a forged document to INEC. So even if the Supreme Court does something in a haste, it will be clear that somebody is trying to be punished. I mean, they're trying to be in collaboration to collude with Mr. Tinubu in this very nefarious activity. With regards to what Mr. Alan Greenspan is doing, it is worthy. That is what any Nigerian who is a patriot should actually be involved with. We should try and understand what character, who is this person who is ruling over us in Nigeria. His name, we're not sure. His age, nobody is sure. His parentage, his state of origin, his academic trajectory, nothing is sure of this man. And he's going to present himself as Nigerian president. Even if the Supreme Court goes ahead and declares that this man has won the election, the fact is this: for anywhere Mr. Tinubu goes as Nigerian's president, the stigma, the stain, the stench will follow him all through. because by then the FBI and co will be releasing these documents on a monthly basis, 500 pages per month, and they will release it. Nothing will stop them from releasing it. So when the Nigerian president now goes, parades himself as a president, and these thinkers begin to come out from the FBI, it will be to the shame and disrepute of our country, quite unfortunately. But hopefully the Supreme Court has an opportunity to salvage Nigeria, to rescue us from this approaching quagmire. And we hope that they live up to their very exalted offices.
All right, Barrister Eze, thank you so much for that proper context that you've been able to express. However, critics would ask questions, for example, that this particular Aaron Greenspan, possibly he has a personal interest or he's been paid money to pursue this matter because he has no obligation whatsoever to the Nigerian government or to the Nigerian people. That's one aspect through which a couple of supporters, of the president, or even those who want to be neutral about this whole thing, would ask their questions from. But another thing for NADECO is this. Now, they ask questions, critics ask questions, because when they made that statement last week Friday that they were going to hold a world press conference in the United States of America, where they're going to ask questions as to the proper identity of the president and where they require the adequate response to be given to them. One of the major questions they're asking is, for example, if the president is involved in identity theft and what that portends for Nigeria as a whole, and this particular issue already at the Supreme Court, how it's going to alter the case already at the Supreme Court. Another question is they're asking is, was the original owner of the number, the social security number of the president, is she or he aware of the social security number being used? And if she is not aware, then what is the true social security number? And under what name is that number registered as? Because as the president has not been able to explain where that came from. They also went further to ask that the number in the written transcripts that the Chicago State University Registrar used as an exhibit that was attached to the deposition given under oath, is it possible for the school to explain who actually owns that particular number? And they're also asking a question that the school themselves, who have actually brought out possibly several responses as to questions being asked on the president's viability or the validity of his attendance of that institution and the courses that he claimed he attended, and the transcripts that were released that, where the courses he studied in the CSU. How true are the, responses from Caleb Westberg's deposition? Also, you recall yesterday at the Supreme Court where one of the judges asked a question, like I remember we had this conversation where the judges asked a question that would it be the Constitution or the Electoral Act that they will use to possibly make a decision or whatsoever. Now, the question is, what effect will this particular call by NADECO have now that the case is already at the Supreme Court? The president has not paid any attention whatsoever to what, the opposition political party has been saying concerning this particular record. But the president has remained astute and confident that the result from the Supreme Court will literally favor him. What's your take on that?
Well, regarding the interest of Mr. Alan Greenspan or whosoever in trying to bring out facts, it is insulting for Nigerians to say he's being paid or whatever. It's like saying that the late Gani Fahimi, who brought out himself and ventured into several issues across the country, even the issues of arrest and detention of people who he never knew that he was being paid. The thing is that, unlike most people, there are some people who will stick out their neck for truth and justice anywhere in the world. So if we have such people, we need to respect them and not to begin to cast aspersions. Regarding the various, so I don't think there's nothing wrong with what Mr. Alan Greenspan is doing. It's like even my several comments on this issue. Some will say, is he being paid or whatever? What do I need to be paid for? To speak out the truth? To stand for the justice and truthfulness? No. It is a shame is for those who have failed to even rise up to speak out the truth and they are scared of speaking the truth. In the words of Wole Soyinka, the man dies who keeps silent in the face of infamy. So those who have kept silent in all these processes should be ashamed of themselves. All Nigerians need to rise up and begin to ask questions. With regards to the questions that NADECO was asking regarding the social security number and other issues, I think those are issues that the FBI files, the documents that the FBI will be releasing, will give an insight into. Because in the United States, only one person can have one social security number. It's like your NIN number. It's like your fingerprints. No two people can have one. So clearly, when these documents begin to be released by the FBI, if there are any issues with the social security number, those things will be addressed. Perhaps that is why the Supreme Court even wants to like hasten up and fasten this process. And before also at the end of the day say, okay, no, he's already the president, we didn't know. Everybody has been put on notice by the fact that are going on, so nobody can claim ignorance. The reality is this: even if he's declared the president, this fact, this sordid fact, this stench will continue to impede Nigeria's progress. That is the more reason why those who have the power to speak up now, those who have the wherewithal to make statements, this is the time to rise up and claim Nigeria back from the brink of total disaster, which the enthronement of somebody who is not qualified will lead this country into.
All right, Barrister Eze, thank you. Now, in reaction to what NADECO has actually done yesterday, apparently the president has filed a motion to intervene in a case seeking to compel the top U.S. security agency to release his records. Now, the motion was filed in the U.S. Court for the Northern District of Columbia, and they're arguing that Tinubu would be adversely affected if the court denies his request. Now, you do recall that this was the same thing that was said before the deposition of Caleb Westberg was eventually heard on, when Judge Nancy Maldonado asked that the academic records be given to Atiku Abubakar within 48 hours. Now, apparently, there are hopes that the release will provide clarity regarding controversy surrounding Mr. President's background and his involvement in a narcotics case that resulted in the forfeiture of $460,000 in 1993. Now, again, which brings us back to the question as to when the FBI would release a record, and if at all this record that is highly anticipated may divulge anything extraordinary. And then the question that comes to mind is that the motion which argues that there is a direct interest in the record is sought for, and the request is fully represented or protected in the case of the president, and that the motion is arguing that Tinubu's interest, which will be adversely affected, is important because of him having a direct concentration on how he administers this particular administration. Now, the action which was taken by the president, which from his main opposition political counterpart, that is Atiku Abubakar, considering his educational record, which is still what is being dealt with at the Supreme Court, and other dealings as well, that the school has not been able to clarify to the clarity of a lot of persons that have been following up the case. But do you think that President Tinubu writing to the FBI would be effective enough for the FBI not to release the record as they had initially stated they would?
Thank you very much. Now, let me make it very, very clear. The issue that Mr. Tinubu submitted as fake, a forged document to INEC has been cleared fully by virtue of the deposition of the Chicago State University, which stated that they didn't know about that certificate, about that document that was submitted. So the issues being raised when the Supreme Court Justice asked that question, that there are two conflicting letters, is a falsehood. There are no two conflicting letters. The letter written by an individual cannot be compared with a deposition written by an institution on the same issue. It's like comparing an oral claim of paternity to a DNA test of paternity. You cannot say that there are two conflicting issues. When somebody has just said orally, I am the father, and the other person has brought out a DNA test results that I am the father. So it is wrong to say that there is still a confusion. There is no confusion whatsoever. A forged document was submitted, and that is the fact. Now, with regards to the letter that Tinubu has asked the FBI to delay, it's basically a waste of time. You see, when you see him patrolling the streets of Nigeria as president, as if nothing is happening, as if it's not worried, it costs a lot of money to retain those lawyers in the United States. And I'm sure every day he gets to have a feedback, but he has to continue to maintain that semblance of carelessness, of carefree, as if he's not worried. If he's not worried, why is he writing those letters? Why is he having lawyers representing in Chicago, in DC? Why is he that bothered? But the fact is, whether he writes those letters or not, if the FBI have committed to release 2,000...
Hello, Barrister Eze. Hello. All right, we seem to have lost a connection with Barrister Eze Oluche. Hello, Barrister Eze. We lost a connection with you. Okay, continue, please.
Okay, what I'm saying is that the letter here with the FBI will be of no moment. The FBI has already committed application states that they release 2,500 documents on Bola Tinubu at a rate of 500 documents a month from October. So it is if our court systems wants to go ahead and allow this man to be the president, that is their own pot of tea. It's not of the concern of the United States that you choose to produce such a person as your president. But then of the consequences, there have been international ramifications, there will be issues of indirect investment coming in and meeting with somebody who is morally tainted and legally tainted. So that it's up to the Nigerians. The US have done their best by saying they will release those documents. The US has also done their best by proving to us that the document Tinubu submitted to INEC document. So if our system now accepts such a character, good, why would you blame the US? Let them go ahead. It's not left for Nigerians to do the best.
All right. Thank you so much, Barrister Ezeli Chair. I sincerely do appreciate your input on the World News at 6. Thank you once again for
taking Thank you very much.
All right. Now, more than 700 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes in the Gaza Strip over the past 24 hours. Israel's military said it struck 400 terror targets and killed several Hamas commanders over the same period. It also declared that it would not reduce its attacks despite Hamas's release of another 2 hostages. UN aid agencies, meanwhile, pleaded for sustained and safe humanitarian access, warning they were on their knees. A third of the hospitals in Gaza are no longer functioning due to the shortages of electricity, medicine and staff, and the shortage of clean water is now critical. Israel launched its bombing campaign against Hamas, which Israel, the UK, US and other powers class as a terrorist organization in response to an unprecedented cross-border attack on the 7th of October, in which at least 1,400 people were killed and 222 others were taken hostage. Nearly 5,800 people have been killed in Gaza since then. The health ministry recently disclosed that there is a lot being put together. Some of those killed in the southern city of Khan Yunis and Rafah were displaced people who had fled the north in response to an Israeli military order to evacuate the area for their own safety. They included 13 members of one family from Gaza City who had been staying in a residential building in Karara on the northeastern outskirts of Khan Yunis, where the population has swelled more than 400,000 to 1.2 million. And before we wrap up the world news at 6 right here on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM, here again are the top stories. You heard that President Tinubu has ordered the implementation of Tax Reform Committee report. Also, the tribunal is set to decide on Fintiri Binani's fate October 28th. U.S. court declines request to compel FBI, CIA, IRS to release files on President Tinubu. More trouble for Tinubu as NADECO storms FBI. U.S. Social Security Administration vows to unmask Tinubu. 2 killed, others injured as bandits invade Kaduna Mosque. And Hamas-run health ministry has disclosed that 700 persons have been killed in 24 hours. That's a wrap on the World News at 6 right here in Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachuku. Good evening and thank you for staying with us.